A very good evening to one and all gathered here. I, Dr. Samarpita Mukherjee, welcome you all on our second online class of 2021, that is Regenerative Medicine and Stem Cell Therapy, organized by ACC-LMP. We all know that most of the advanced diagnostic techniques and recent advancements in medicine are mainly based on biochemistry. Team ACC-LMP has taken a great initiative to organize online classes covering such topics. It would be really helpful for us, especially in this pandemic situation, when going to seminars, conferences, and workshops is nearly impossible. I convey my sincere gratitude to Team ACC-LMP for their efforts. Though these classes are arranged keeping the postgraduate training in mind, all the willing faculties can also attend these online classes. Regarding today's topic, we all know that stem cell therapy and regenerative medicine is the emerging branch of medical sciences dealing with functional and structural restoration of tissues and organs. The spectacular progress in this field has laid the foundation for cell-based therapies for the diseases which cannot be cured by conventional approach. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Sayantan Dasgupta, Associate Professor of North Bengal Medical College, to give an insight to this complicated topic. He is also the member of editorial committee of Journal of Applied Biochemistry and Laboratory Medicine, that is our official journal of ACC-LMP. He is a brilliant academician and excellent teacher with more than 10 years of teaching experience in the field of biochemistry. Thank you, sir, for taking some time out for us from your busy schedule. Now, I have two important announcements for all the participants. First, to keep their audio mute during the whole session. Secondly, there will be two classes, each of 1 hour duration, including today and tomorrow. Participants are requested to post their queries in the chat box during tomorrow's class. Answers will be given at the end of the class. Due to time constraints, sir will be able to answer only 3 to 5 questions. For the rest, please mail them to our official mail address, that is acclmpiofficials@gmail.com. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Samarpita, for your kind introduction. And am I audible well?
Yeah, it's audible.
Sir,
Is my
yes,
sound
you are
audible?
audible. Yes, you are audible, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Okay. So let us start. The idea about these classes, they started when a chatter started in the ACC-LMP groups, when many of our postgraduate trainees, they first started or some of them requested that there are certain topics that apart from the topics that we discuss in usually in the different kinds of seminars, there are many other topics which are very important for their exams, and those topics which are not very well discussed or not found in one place for the exam purpose in the textbooks that they read. So some of those topics, they themselves are postgraduate trainees, they themselves suggested some of those topics, and from those topics, two topics were chosen out, and I thank ACC-LMP and all the organizers for giving me the honor to take one of those classes among one of those topics, that is stem cell therapy and regenerative medicine. Is my video visible? Anil, I can't see whether I'm visible or not.
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Shantan, I can see you very clearly. So carry on, please.
Okay, sir. Okay. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. Okay. So I hope my screen has come. So
Yeah, you can visualize, sir. No issue.
we are going to start today's session now. Thank you everyone for being there. Uh, Stem cells we will discuss. The thing is that although our topic was stem cell therapy, so if only we go by the topic that was stipulated to be discussed, that would be only the therapeutic part and the research that is going on the stem cell therapy and the regenerative medicine part. But I thought that since the requirement for this class mainly was for the requirement of the postgraduate trainees, so I will discuss three different aspects of stem cells, one of them being the stem cell therapy. So what I will do is, I will discuss the stem cell biology. The biology of the stem cell we will discuss. That is very, very important to understand, because I think this topic of stem cell can come in the exam, in the PG exam in different universities, not only in the stem cell therapy oriented, but also the biology and the stem cell culture. So cell biology I will discuss first, then I'll go to the stem cell culture a little bit, and then we will discuss the stem cell therapy and the regenerative medicine part. So on these three aspects we will discuss one by one. We will go to each one of them. Now another thing I want to acknowledge, I just want to clear out at the very beginning that I see that there are many senior teachers, in fact, including my own teacher and my mentor, Dr. Anindya Das Gupta sir is also present. So many senior teachers, and apart from him also many other senior teachers and faculty members are present. But at the very beginning, at the very outset, I must say one thing, that I have planned this class mainly for the purpose of the postgraduate trainees, and also thinking about their exam, or how much they can remember and how much they can reproduce in the exam, and little bit more than that. So in many points I will come again and again, I'll repeat them, I will go little bit slow, and I will also avoid the temptation that I myself felt while preparing the slides, of going to discussion of some of the very interesting topics that come in while in the context. But I will not go there very far, because I hope that the senior teachers will pardon me for being a little bit slow and little bit toned down in the discussion. And if any postgraduate trainee wants to take a running note, I think they can take. I'll try to move as slow as possible. Okay. So with that, let us start the discussion. Now about the stem cells, exactly what stem cells is we do not know, but we knew that there must be some kind of cells in our body that can regenerate different types of body parts. So this is a very, very interesting idea that humankind had for many years, that if there is something that can regenerate an entire body, if regenerate different body parts, etc., so that will be the final miracle that we can have. But we knew that there are certain things in certain animals like starfish where there is a capacity to regenerate body parts or some missing parts. In 1950s itself, there was development of bone marrow transplant treatment. So bone marrow transplant is in fact a kind of stem cell therapy. So there are certain cells that can be identified that can regenerate tissues, that we knew from the early 1950s when we developed this stem cell, this bone marrow transplantation therapy. But still the stem cell idea of stem cell came little bit later. Where? From the embryos. The first stem cells that we could extract, embryonic stem cells, were in the 1980s. But it wasn't until the 1998 that some scientists in the Wisconsin-Madison University, they were the first group of scientists who not only could extract, they could also keep them alive as a cell line of the embryonic stem cells. So it is as late as in the 1980s that we identify them, and as late as almost at the end of the millennium when we first been able to produce a stem cell line that could survive outside the body. So where from our, so embryonic stem cells, we know that the embryo grows from one cell. When the fertilization occurs and a zygote is formed, the zygote divides into 2 cells, 4 cells, and then it keeps on dividing. It produces the blastocyst, and from there the fetus and then the adult human being is developed. So from there we already knew that there must be some cells during the fetal life, in the fetal stage or in the earlier stage, when one cell is developing into an entire human being, there must be, these cells must be having the capacity to divide in a very large number and then differentiate into different types of body cells. So if there is any stem cell, these stem cells must be somewhere around here, which can produce different organs, which can produce different other types of cells. So indeed that was found. Okay. So the two kinds of, this is a very, very important slide that I want to mention, that the two major kinds of characters that these stem cells have, we need to remember. I will mention it again and again and again. So the two major characters that define a stem cell are, number one, self-renewal, that a stem cell can divide again and again and again, producing its own self. The same thing, a stem cell will divide to produce one copy of the stem cell itself. This property is known as self-renewal. And the second property, the second defining property of stem cells is differentiation, where a stem cell differentiate into other types of cells, which are specialized cells, which will ultimately serve a specific physiological function. So these, again, I mentioned, I'll come to it again and again, many, many times. I'll bore you out by repeating this thing. I hope the PGTs at the end of the class will remember at least these two characters of stem cells, that is self-renewal and the differentiation. It can produce itself again and again. And the second part, if it divides into two cells, one will be a stem cell, another will be differentiated into a specialized cell. That may be muscle cell, blood cell, nerve cell, whatever. So again, the two characters are self-replication or self-renewal. It can divide a single stem cell. On one half, it will divide into replication of itself. On the second half, it will differentiate into different types of adult, matured, differentiated, functional body cells. That may be adipose cell, neuronal cell, blood cell, whatever. So why these two things? These two are the two characters. One stem cell divides not into two stem cells or not into two differentiated cells. Why a stem cell will divide into one stem cell and another will go to the differentiated cell. So if we follow this pathway of breakdown, we will see like this: one stem cell divided into another stem cell and one differentiated cell. It do not divide any further. It has now become matured and specialized. This one will again divide into another stem cell and another differentiated cell. This one again will follow this. So as we continue this, what happens? This one half of division, the self-renewal, this maintains our stem cell pool. If both these stem cells are divided into mature differentiated cells, then after some time we'll finish up. We'll use up all the stem cells. We need to maintain a pool of the stem cells which can keep on producing differentiated cells whenever necessary. So this part, the self-renewal, is for maintenance of the stem cell pool. And obviously the second part will differentiate, which will produce different types of mature tissue cells and which will be used for replacing the damaged cells or the dead cells, or whenever there is requirement for some type of specialized cell. So this is how the two defining features of stem cell, I again repeat, that is self-renewal and differentiation, they both become vital for the functionality of stem cell to continue properly. So the first type of stem cell that obviously we get, that is the from embryo. This is known as the embryonic stem cells. So they are known as the embryonic stem cells. So where from we get these embryonic stem cells? In embryology, we all remember there is a phase which is, or there is a stage which is known as the blastocyst. So blastocyst is the, sorry. So this is blastocyst. This is the phase. Blastocyst is the phase. This phase is known as blastocyst. And in this blastocyst, we find a group of cells. In this blastocyst, there is an outer layer which is known as trophoectoderm. This trophoectoderm will then go and be implanted on the uterus and help in the production of placenta. And the cells of this inner cell mass will then divide into 3 different cell layers, that is ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm, and then they will divide into production of different types of tissues, different types of cells. So this inner cell mass, this is where our embryonic stem cells are present. So it is the inner cell mass where we have the embryonic stem cells. Now we go to the next level, that is what are the different types. So we'll come back to the inner cell mass and the embryonic stem cells. But before that, another thing we need to know that all these stem cells are not same. They are cardinal features, that is the self-renewal and differentiation that is present in all kinds of stem cells. But the capacity to differentiate into variety of cells, that will differ from different types of stem cells to another. So depending on that, depending on their capability to differentiate into how many variety of different adult cells, they can be differentiated into mainly 3 types. That is totipotent, pluripotent, and multipotent. Okay. The totipotent, this one, totipotent, toti means whole, as we can see. So the totipotent, if it is a totipotent stem cell, then it should be having the capability to produce an entire adult human being from scratch. And then pluripotent, pluri means many, it has the capability of producing all the different types of cells. But in itself, it does not have the capacity to produce an entire human being. So what is the difference? These inner cell mass that I mentioned in the previous slide, they are the pluripotent stem cells. And the pluripotent stem cells, they can produce the cells of all the 3 germ cell layers. That is the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. All 3 can be produced from the pluripotent stem cells. So what can it not form? The only thing that it cannot form is this trophoectoderm, from where the placenta is formed. And if that cannot be formed, an entire human being from 0 you cannot produce. So that is the difference between toti and pluripotent. So where you find the totipotent stem cells, you will find the totipotent stem cells, if you go to the previous slides, typically in these stages when there are 4 to 8 cells. Here we find the totipotent stem cells that can produce the blastocyst and then the entire human being. But once you form the blastocyst and there is inner cell mass that is already differentiated from the trophoectoderm, these inner cell mass cells are only pluripotent. Then the pluripotent cells of inner cell mass will go into different germ cell layers and they will produce multipotent stem cells, which then will produce stem cells of one specific cell lineage only, like say hematopoietic stem cells or neuronal stem cells, like that. We will come to it little bit later. So these are the 3 main groups, that is the totipotent, pluripotent, and multipotent. There are some other terms like oligopotent and unipotent stem cells that are also found in some literature, but we will rather not use them too much. Instead of that, we'll use some other term. I'll come to it. So this is how it happens, fertilization. Then here we find the totipotent stem cells, and then once we produce the blastocyst, the inner cell mass will have the pluripotent stem cells. This is a diagram, actual diagram showing that. So now where we can find these stem cells. So already discussed inner cell mass, they will, if we take out and then we grow in a culture medium. Which culture medium, how, I will come. Then we can grow. So from blastocyst, we take the inner cell mass, we grow them, and then we differentiate them into different types of specialized cells. How do we differentiate them? That we will again come later. So what they can do? Embryonic stem cells that we are finding from the inner cell mass, we have already told that they are pluripotent. So they can produce all the different cell types that we find in an adult human being. All the specialized cell types of all the 3 germ layers that can be produced from embryonic stem cells. So obviously they are examples of pluripotent stem cells. Now, after the embryonic stem cells in adult body also, later on we found out that there are some stem cells that can be found. Obviously, again, from the knowledge that from bone marrow we can pick out some cells which can be transplanted and produce the blood cells. So that we knew that there must be some stem cells that in the adult tissue. So indeed, we have found now that there is stem cell which is known as adult stem cells, which are not pluripotent. They will either be multipotent or even further downstream in the differentiation line, but they can be found on different tissues. They can be found obviously on the bone marrow, they can be found on testis, they can be found brain, in muscles. There are different cells, different tissues. Every day we are finding different sources, new sources from where some kind of stem cells, adult stem cells can be produced. Now, what is the principle that I was saying, that the stage of differentiation? First, you have a stem cell, and then it starts to differentiate. In this line of differentiation, more you go down this line of differentiation from a stem cell to the specialized cell, the level or the capability to differentiate into more and more things, this capability will go lower and lower and lower. So we start with totipotent stem cells, which have capability to differentiate into everything. Then we go into pluripotent, which will have comparatively lesser capability to differentiate because it cannot produce the placenta. From pluripotent, we go to multipotent, which is specific on any particular cell lineage. And from there, we produce cells which we call committed progenitor cells. They can amplify, they can rapidly divide, and they can produce mature cells of one typical cell line. We will see specific examples. So these committed progenitor cells, in some texts you can find as unipotent, etc. These terms are used, but better we will stick to the term committed progenitor cells. So they also, these progenitor cells also have some of the capabilities of the stem cells, that they can divide and they can differentiate, but not into multitude of different things. They will differentiate into only one kind of adult cell. So let us come to such examples. The most important example is the hematopoietic stem cell, the adult stem cells that are mostly multipotent. The most important example is the hematopoietic stem cell. Now, hematopoietic stem cell, obviously we know, is present in the bone marrow. So we know it is obviously present in the bone marrow. From this, there are different levels of committed progenitor cells formed. At first, it is differentiated into 2 groups. One is the lymphoid lineage, another is the myeloid. As you all know, from the myeloid, all the granulocytes and erythrocytes and platelet, etc. are formed. And from this lymphoid lineage, these progenitor cells, you produce the T cell, B cell, NK cell, etc. Then these progenitors further divide. As they divide, their capability to differentiate further go down. So they say this myeloid lineage divide into different groups. From some groups, we get the erythroid lineage and megakaryocytic lineage. From another group, we get the neutrophil and macrophage. And then from other groups, other progenitors, we get the granulocytes like eosinophils and basophils. So this is how these stem cells, adult stem cells, from pluripotent to multipotent to then progenitor cells, they progress. As they progress, they differentiate more, and their capability to further differentiate comes down more and more. Okay. So next we will quickly go through some other examples. This is a very, I would say, typical example where we can see how it progresses through more and more differentiation, and their capability to differentiate further and further decreases. So next we go to the neural stem cell, which is again another kind of adult stem cell present in the neural tissue. And from there, they produce different type of committed progenitors, and they will ultimately give rise to specialized mature cells, different types of neural tissue cells like neurons, starting from neurons, and their oligodendrocytes and astrocytes and everything else. So then the next example will be gut stem cells, that is present in the small intestine mainly. And again, they will produce committed progenitor, from which different types of endocrine cell, columnar cell, and the goblet cells, all different cells will be produced. Then there is very important mesenchymal stem cells. These mesenchymal stem cells, they give rise to different types of connective tissue like bone and cartilage and adipocytes, etc., etc. Again, there are specific committed progenitors from which these cells will be produced. Now, after discussing the embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells that are present actually in the human body during the embryonic stage or in the adult body, there is another very, very revolutionary discovery that has changed the entire scenario of stem cell research, is known as induced pluripotent stem cells. As we can understand, and we will discuss later, that embryonic stem cells, extracting them from a blastocyst, from a growing embryo, that obviously will have many ethical issues. So it is not that easy to work with that. On the other hand, the adult stem cells in the adult tissue, they are very hard to find. There is very little amount of such cells. So if we can convert some adult cells into stem cells, if we can backtrack or if we can reprogram them, the stem cells have been differentiated into adult cells. But if we can back differentiate them, or if we can reprogram them back to the stem cells again, then that would be fantastic, because we can collect adult tissue from anywhere. So that research finally got a breakthrough in 2006, where we got a cell known as induced pluripotent stem cells. From the term pluripotent, you can understand they are having the very high level of potency or capability of differentiation that is present only in the embryonic stem cells, that level of potency. So this is the one of the most important. So any cell like skin cell or fibroblast, we can reprogram. Okay, so we take a specialized cell, say a fibroblast, and then we reprogram them through activation of these 4 pluripotency genes. This was the discovery, that these are the 4 pluripotency genes. Okay? These are OCT4. Again, this is another thing I will mention many times. If any PGT is taking a running note, or if wants to, he or she can highlight this thing, that these are the 4 genes. This is a very important thing. These 4 genes, that is OCT4, SOX2, c-MYC, and KLF4. These are the 4 genes that are that causes the reprogramming of the specialized cell back into a stem cell, and then we can call it an induced pluripotent stem cell. It was not a stem cell, but we have back programmed it, reprogrammed it into a pluripotent stem cell, induced pluripotent stem cell. And as it becomes the induced pluripotent stem cell, now it gets both the characters, defining characters of the stem cells, that is self-renewal and differentiation, as we have mentioned. So both these characters now appear. So because these characters appear, we know that this has been converted to stem cell. Now this was discovered by the Japanese scientist Shinya Yamanaka, and these four factors, he introduced these 4 factors in a mouse fibroblast through a retrovirus vector. And these 4 factors are therefore known as Yamanaka factor. Okay, again I repeat, OCT4, SOX2, c-MYC, and KLF4. These are the 4 factors, 4 genes that are activated. This is known as the Yamanaka factor, which will convert an adult cell into an induced pluripotent stem cell. Now, the problem is the efficiency of this process is very, very low and it is very time consuming. We'll come to it later again. So in 2006, he first did this. In 2006, Yamanaka first did or produced the induced pluripotent stem cell in mouse fibroblast cells. Then in the very next year, in 2007, he did this or repeated this experiment in human cells also. The same retroviral vector, same 4 genes, and human fibroblast has been converted into iPSC, that is induced pluripotent stem cell. In the same year, a similar research was done in University of Wisconsin, Madison. As we see, this is one of the main centers of stem cell research. Here, Dr. James Thompson, he used 4 different sets of genes, little bit different. That is OCT4, SOX2, these 2 are common. But instead of the CMYC and KLF4, here he used 2 other genes, that is NANOG and LIN28. And the vector he used was again different. Instead of retroviral, here he used the lentiviral vector. But the result was same, the thing was same, the reprogramming of an adult cell into an induced pluripotent stem cell. Now, apart from the fibroblast, many other adult cells have been worked with and reprogrammed. One of the very important is the exfoliated renal epithelial cell that can be easily collected from anybody's urine. That can also be reprogrammed back to iPSC. So this is what is happening. Very simply, adult fibroblast cells, they are reprogrammed through the 4 factors known as Yamanaka factor. It produces the induced pluripotent stem cell, and from there now we can have the chance of, since it is pluripotent, we can produce any type of adult cells that we want. Now, the 4 problems of this production or 4 drawbacks that we have in synthesizing the induced pluripotent stem cells. The number 1 is efficiency. As I mentioned, its efficiency is very low. Number 2, genomic insertion. As we insert these 4 factors, there may be insertion of other genes, other mutations into the host genome. To minimize that, the vector has been tried to be changed to plasmid, transposon, etc. But this risk still remains. Then we all know that CMYC, we have all heard about CMYC, that this is a factor that can cause cancer. It is an oncogene, okay, or proto-oncogene. So there is a risk if we reprogram and reactivate this gene, then there may be a potential risk of developing cancer in the host tissue. And then there may be incomplete reprogramming. All the 4 factors that are supposed to program may not be completely successful. Okay. So with this, we finished the basic biology of the stem cells that we need to know. So we have seen what are the different types of stem cells. That is the totipotent, pluripotent, multipotent, etc. Then what are the sources? Embryonic, then adult from different tissues, which are mainly multipotent, and then the induced pluripotent stem cells. How they are produced, what are their different functions and capabilities, we have discussed. Now let us come to a next thing that we will discuss today, is the stem cell culture. And while we discuss the stem cell culture, another very important term, that is stem cell niche, will come. I hope these topics I will discuss in very short. So I hope the basic idea about what is a stem cell niche and what are the ways we can culture them, the basic things, I hope our postgraduates can remember and reproduce in the exam if it comes. So the idea of stem cell niche was first proposed in 1978 by Schofield. So niche is basically the environment in which the stem cells reside. It is the environment which helps the stem cells stay there and grow and do their function. They support this is the supporting environment. It is like the supporting environment everyone needs to show their exact or all potentials. For that, now I have quoted a long sentence, in fact, a long paragraph, I should say, from an article in Nature. I found this in one article while I was reading one article. It was so comprehensive that I could not resist the temptation of quoting it entirely. So just give me 1 minute so that I can read it entirely, because from here we will find that it almost describes the entire thing, the idea about stem cell niche, what it means. So stem cell populations are established in niches, specific anatomic locations that regulate how they participate in tissue generation, maintenance, and repair. So it is the anatomical location. This stem cell, what does they do? They save stem cells from depletion while protecting the host from over-exuberant stem cell proliferation. So it protects the stem cells. Also, it prevents too much division in the stem cell proliferation. It constitutes a basic unit of tissue physiology, integrating signals that mediate the balanced response of stem cells to need of the organism. So signals that tell the stem cells to divide, tell the stem cells to differentiate into particular tissue. We will come to some signals later on. So the regulation and interaction through those signals, that is also done with help of the stem cell niche. Yet the niche may also induce pathologies by imposing aberrant functions. So if it can regulate, it can dysregulate on stem cells or other targets. The interplay between stem cells and their niche creates the dynamic system necessary for sustaining tissues and for the ultimate design of stem cell therapeutics. Why we are understanding this? Why we are discussing this? Because if this is so important in the normal functioning of stem cell in vivo, then if we try to use it in therapeutics, again, we will have to have the knowledge of this one, of its signaling, of its regulation. The simple location of stem cell is not sufficient to define a niche. Although I said that it has said that it is the specific anatomical location, but it is not just the location. The niche must have both anatomic and functional dimensions. I think this one paragraph sums up everything about the stem cell niche, what it is and what it does. So although it's a long paragraph, I have quoted it entirely. Now we will try to see some examples of stem cell niches in some specific adult stem cells. Okay, most of the idea about stem cell niche came from discovery from the study of Drosophila and C. elegans. As we all know, many parts of cell biology, many knowledge of cell biology came from their research on them. So anyway, the first, most importantly, the hematopoietic stem cell niche. In the hematopoietic stem cell niche, what are the cells? It is the, again, one thing is, this is one area where we could have discussed a lot. I had the temptation of discussing many things. The individual signaling pathways are also very, very interesting to discuss, but maybe in some later in some other classes, if can be arranged, some other lecturer can lecture on them. But today I will be very, very brief on them and not go into the submit to the temptation of going into each of these pathways, because each of them are very, very interesting. Okay, and I still remember during my PG days, Anindya Dasgupta sir himself discussed many of these pathways when we were PG students. So these are some of the very, very interesting topics. They are still very interesting, but today we will not go into much detail. We'll just mention so that if PGTs can take a little bit of running note, if they want, they can write it in the exam. So in case of HSC, that is the hematopoietic stem cell, the niche is mainly osteoblastic cells. It is the osteoblastic cells, not just any osteoblastic cell. Remember, the osteoblastic cell must have these two very specific markers. That is, it has to be N-cadherin positive and CD45 negative. So it should be N-cadherin positive and CD45 negative. Those osteoblastic cells are acting as the niche for hematopoietic stem cells. And hematopoietic stem cells physically go and attach in the bone marrow with help of these cells. And the main signaling pathway that regulate the activation, function, etc. of the stem cells and their interaction with the niche cells is through these three pathways. The pathways I'll not go into detail, but you may know these pathways. That is WNT beta-catenin, one of the very important pathways, Notch, another pathway, and BMP, that is the bone morphologic protein pathway. These three signaling pathways are very, very important. So this is a diagram. Here we can see This is the hematopoietic stem cell. This is the hematopoietic stem cell, this pink one. And then in this bone marrow, this is the stem cell niche, the niche cell. That is a specific type of osteoblastic cell which has the cadherin positive, beta cadherin positive, and it is CD45 negative. And their interaction involves, as we can see, many different signaling pathways, including beta-catenin and BMP and Jagged pathway and many others. Again, I am not going there because it will take too much time. Then the next stem cell, that is epithelial stem cells, which is present in the niche, in the skin. So what is the niche for these stem cells? The stem cell niche here is present in the bulge area. Here there is a specific area known as the bulge area. In this bulge area, we will find these stem cells in their niche. This is the area of hair follicle beneath the sebaceous gland. This acts as the stem cell niche. Again, this signaling pathway is WNT and BMP. These are some of the common pathways that will come again and again in most of the stem cell to stem cell niche interaction, niche to stem cell interaction. Okay. The next is the intestinal stem cell, the gut stem cell, as we mentioned previously, GS. So here the mesenchymal cells subjacent to the epithelial cells and some of the endothelial cells of blood, they are acting as the stem cell niche. Here we can see the green cell, that is the mesenchymal cell, and this pink one is the intestinal stem cell or gut stem cell. This is the stem cell, this is its niche. Okay, stem cell to niche interaction. Here the interaction again is through WNT and BMP. There is obviously many other pathways also, as we can see, Noggin, Notch, etc. So here we have already found some cases where inappropriate activation of these pathways, they can result into some of the intestinal tumors because they will inappropriately too much activate the stem cells there. Next, we can go to the neural stem cell niche. The neural stem cells mainly found in two zones, that is the subventricular zone and the subgranular zone. And subventricular zone is a region lining the lateral ventricle, and subgranular zone is present in the hippocampus. Okay, so in these zones, the niche is mainly some of the endothelial cells and some of the specialized basal lamina. And the signals, as we can see, again, we come back to the same kind of signals, BMP, Noggin, and some of the growth factors, transforming growth factor, and some of the other growth factors. So this is the subventricular zone and this is the subgranular zone, and they then divide into different types of adult cells. So just names and what is the, if you can remember just the name of the stem cell, what cell is its niche and what is the signaling involved, I think that would be more than sufficient. So to summarize the idea about stem cell niche, there are 4 points I will mention. Number one, the stem cell niche is composed of a group of cells in a special tissue location for the maintenance of stem cells. So its anatomical location is important, and then obviously its function is important. As in case of hematopoietic stem cell, we see that N-cadherin positive and CD45 negative osteoblastic cells will act as the stem cell niche. Number two, the niche functions as a physical anchor for the stem cell. It is where the stem cells will anchor, will hold into that tissue. Next, the niche will generate different extrinsic factors that will control the stem cell fate, stem cell number, stem cell differentiation. Everything that stem cell does is regulated and controlled through its interaction with the niche cells. And again, many signaling molecules, each of which can be discussed separately in a separate class, including the HH means hedgehog, then WNT, BMP, FGF, Notch, and there are many other such signaling pathways that are involved. This is a very complex biosignaling pathway that is involved in their interaction. And then number four, in invertebrates and mammals, the stem cell niche exhibits an asymmetric structure. What does it mean? That upon division, one daughter cell is maintained in the niche as stem cell that we were discussing at the very beginning, which is self-renewal. And the other daughter cell leaves the niche. So if in the niche, if it divides into two cells, it will keep one cell as stem cell, that is stem cell renewal, and release the other cell. That will now differentiate, proliferate, and will produce a functionally mature cell. So this thing, these two things, that there is a asymmetric fate of the two daughter cells, the self renewal, which maintains self renewal and differentiation or specialization, that also is regulated with help of the stem cell niche. So now finally we come to a little bit small discussion on how stem cells can be cultured. So there can be different types of culture conditions that can be produced. I obviously will not go into very detail until and unless someone works with that or these things in a lab. It is very difficult to just memorize. So I'll just go through little bit of information on those things again, so that if you are wanting to make a note, you can make a small note. So these cells, one thing that just like we need niche for the maintenance of the stem cells, for culture of the stem cells, we need a supporting layer or a feeder cells that we call the feeder cells. So that can be on some kind of extracellular matrix, some basement membrane gel, or some specific type of feeder cells. So what are the feeder cells? What can be the feeder cells? I'll come to it. So if we use a feeder cell, then that kind of cell culture will be known as feeder dependent cell culture. So feeder cells, they will condition the medium through the metabolic leakage so that they can get, the stem cells get all the nutrients. They also help in the attachment and proliferation. So the most commonly usually used feeder cell is mitotically inactivated fibroblast feeder cells. The fibroblast cells, mainly from mouse, they can be mitotically inactivated and then they can be used as feeder cells. So they are used or irradiated with UV or mitomycin C, etc., so that their cell division, etc., can be stopped. So the feeder cells do not divide. They only help as a metabolic support for the stem cells that we are trying to culture. So the mouse embryonic fibroblasts, they can be used as feeder cells. And now another very interesting source, that is human foreskin fibroblasts. So again, a fibroblast that can be used as feeder cells. So mouse and human, obviously, if it is human, that will be better. Then different types of zoonotic diseases or their some kind of form of genetic transfer, etc., the risk of that will be decreased. So what are the drawbacks using of feeders? It is obviously labor intensive, risk of transmitting the animal pathogen zoonotic disease from the animal feeder cells if you are using, and it may yield a mixed culture of stem cell and fibroblast. Not only stem cells, they grow, the fibroblasts, the feeder cells, they also grow, and your culture become not exactly what you want. It's a mixed culture. So to prevent mixed culture formation, we are trying to inactivate the feeder cells. Then there is another kind of stem cell culture which is known as feeder-free stem cell culture, where we do not use the feeder cell. Human-induced pluripotent stem cells, that is HIPSC, they can be cultured in extracellular matrix in place of the feeder cells. So we replace the feeder cells with some extracellular matrix suitably used so that the pluripotent stem cells, they can be grown in that. So it is easier to use. Obviously, no risk of any zoonotic disease, zoonotic pathogen to be transmitted. And the mixed culture, obviously the extracellular matrix will not proliferate. So there is no risk of mixed culture. Now there is one small slide, that human embryonic cell culture, how it happens. We separate the embryonic stem cells from the inner cell mass and then culture in the fibroblast feeder cells. Then after 9 to 15 days, we separate it out and then replicate into a new feeder cells. Then they differentiate. If they differentiate or in such form, again we take out small human embryonic stem cells and again we culture them. And this is the established culture. So this is how first we take cells from the inner cell mass, then culture, then again take out in the second layer of culture, and then from there we finally establish our culture that we keep. Then there is a mesenchymal stem cell culture that we can also, again, I'll just go through them very shortly. So mesenchymal stem cells are adult stem cells from in the adult tissue. So they are multipotent, as this discussion we have already done. So they are isolated from the connective tissue like bone marrow, adipose tissue, etc., etc. And then we can culture in the as we mentioned previously, and then we can differentiate them into different types of mesenchymal cells like adipose, bone, tendon, cartilage, muscle, etc., etc. How do we differentiate this? Another very important thing. Not only it is sufficient to culture a particular type of stem cell, it is also important for the therapeutic purpose that when we want to use that stem cell to regenerate or to repair or to use in one particular tissue or organ, we have to differentiate our stem cell now to that particular tissue cell. So that differentiating signal, those are also very important, but that I will discuss tomorrow when I discuss the stem cell therapies. Okay. So the next thing is induced pluripotent stem cell, the HIPSC or the human iPSC culture. Again, we reprogram the fibroblast or some other adult matured cell through the reprogramming factors that we have already said is Yamanaka factor, that is OCT4, SOX2, KLF4 and c-MYC. These 4 factors, they become induced pluripotent stem cells. They are reprogrammed and form the induced pluripotent stem cells. Now we keep them, we keep the culture, and whenever needed, we can differentiate them depending on different types of what is my target cell. So if I want to produce cardiomyocytes, then the differentiation factor that I use is activin A and BMP4, some other things also, but mainly activin A and BMP4. So like that for each and every target. So after I have established my stem cell culture, now if I want to use it therapeutically, how I differentiate? So for that differentiation, now I will have to give specific differentiation. So some of such examples we'll discuss tomorrow. Okay. Now, teratoma formation assay is one important test to see whether a human induced pluripotent stem cell or any kind of induced pluripotent stem cell has indeed become an induced pluripotent stem cell. So you have started working with an adult cell. Now I want to know whether it has actually become a pluripotent stem cell. To know that, after culturing, after reprogramming and then culturing, etc., I want to know whether my cell is actually pluripotent or not. For that, one of the important assays is teratoma formation assay. I will very briefly describe it. So this is to assess the capability of reprogramming. So what we do, we take the iPSC, supposedly that should have become iPSC, and then we inject it subcutaneously or under the kidney or testis capsule of a mice. Okay. And what if any PGT is actually listening or not slept off, can anybody just tell me what is the special character of teratoma? Can anybody please just tell me what is teratoma? Any for PGTs? If anybody can unmute himself or herself and just tell me. No. Okay. Acha. Teratoma is a kind of benign tumor. We all know that teratomas that contains the cells of all the 3 cell lineages. That is the endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm. All the 3 lineage of cells, they are present in the teratoma. So after I inject this iPSC that I think should have become iPSC, then if it has indeed become pluripotent, that it can have the capability of producing all the 3 germ layers, that is cells of ecto, endo, and mesoderm, then there will be production of teratoma. So in a mice, subcutaneously or under the capsule of kidney or testis, we inject the iPSC that we have formed. If it is correctly reprogrammed, if it has indeed become pluripotent, then there will be formation of teratoma. That's it. I will not go into further detail of this teratoma formation assay. If you can just remember what it is, again, I think that will be very good. Then finally, iPSC when cultured, there are different types of quality controls that can be done on an iPSC after reprogramming and culturing. Again, many of these topics, again, each can be individually discussed in a separate class of half hour, 1 hour or more. But just remember these names, if you can, at least some of them, that is short tandem repeat analysis, identity analysis, residual vector testing, karyotyping, viral testing. Karyotyping you all know, bacterial or fungal sterility test, single nucleotide polymorphism arrays or SNP arrays, flow cytometry, and phenotypic pluripotency assays. These are different assays that can be done for the quality control, different kinds of how it is reprogrammed, whether its genetic integrity is present or not. All these types of reprogramming can be done, or all the reprogramming, their quality control, their actual quality control can be done by using these methods. I'm again not going into detail of any of these methods. Okay, so thank you up to this only today. Then tomorrow's class we will come to the discussion of the potential sources and the therapeutic uses. So although our class heading was stem cell therapy, but therapy I have not used today. They're not discussed today. Today we have only discussed the basic biology of stem cells, their types, etc., and their culture, their niche, etc. Because these ideas are very, very important to understand the idea of how stem cells can be used therapeutically. This thing we will discuss tomorrow. And for now, thank you very much. Over to you, Shamarpita.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful class. You have made us understand so nicely what is stem cell, important features and types of stem cell, principles of cell renewals. We got a clear idea about stem cell niche, stem cell culture. Thank you once again, sir. Eagerly looking forward to tomorrow's class. Now, a gentle reminder for all the participants. Participants are requested to post their queries in the chat box during tomorrow's class. Answer will be given at the end of the class. Due to time constraints, sir will be able to answer only 3 to 5 questions among them. For the rest, please mail them to our official mail address. Thank you all. Good night.